This is the story of the troubled life of 4 Extra. Now, 4 Extra had a really troubled life, but he was able to turn things around. There are very few people on earth who start gangbanging right from the is this dude named 4 Extra. In this video, we will be going through his troubled life, from his early introduction to gang life, his ins and outs with law enforcement, and his drive towards redemption. All I can say is, this dude, life is really messed up, and it's my pleasure to tell you this story. Almost every gangbanger has 2 things in common. First off, they have a very shitty childhood. I mean, of course, right? Like, you almost certainly had to have had the joy stolen from your childhood to resort to gangbanging. And second, they start practicing their craft of gangbanging quite early. And the same can be said with 4 Extra. 4 Extra likely popped out of his mama in the middle of a serious gang fight, because this dude picked up gang life before he could even say dada. Yeah, let me not get too ahead of myself, bro, because 4 Extra can fight and I can't. Now, the Rollin 40s is one of LA's black neighborhoods located on the west side of South Central Los Angeles. This hood is just dangerous through and through because it is the home turf of the Rollin 40s Crips, one of the most dangerous street gangs in LA. In this hood, you're either one of the gang boys or one of those nerds who study hard, go to college, and make something out of their lives. This is just to give you an idea of where 4 Extra was born and why I said he probably was born in the middle of a gang fight, but that is not only the reason why I said that, right? So this dude 4 Extra was born and raised in the gangs. His cousins probably gave him the mock lessons on how to run the streets, throw some punches, and hold a gun while he was still pooping his diapers. I say this because although his daddy was one of those college kids who studied hard in high school, went to college, and joined the army, his little boy was miles away, different from him. This was mainly because his old man was hardly home to give him some fatherly training, so he was left with his older cousins who were gangbangers themselves. As a result, his first words were the words of the streets, and his first steps were those of the streets. He was literally born to gangbang. But there ain't no gangbangers or ain't no baby gangbangers. You have to grow up to join the streets. So how young is too early? 15, 14, or 11?
I started off young though, banging. I started off young, 11, running after my cousins in the hood.
So you always were around the gangbang?
Off the back, I'm born and raised in the hood.
Okay.
I'm born and raised in the hood, on Western Vernon. I'm born and raised in the set, in the 40s, South Central, off the back, whole family from the set.
But at what point do you stop being just a kid and realize I'm trying to get down?
At 11.
Okay.
At 11. I probably would have started earlier than that. But I ran out around my cousin Turtle, at 11 though, jumped off the porch quick.
And did you have anybody trying to keep you away from this life?
Hell yeah, my dad. My dad and my mom.
Right.
But my mom, they always gonna follow and do what the husband do. But my mom and my dad, but my dad for sure. He was tripping,
But he was from the same hood?
No, my dad don't bang.
He wasn't, okay.
No, hell no, he went to school, graduated and all that, I'm talking about, been to the army. I'm talking about, he believe in, education is the key.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? He didn't believe in the gang stuff, you know what I'm saying?
11 years old is when 4 Extra decided to drop being a child and take up the way of the streets. He was barely into middle school, but he was already a pain in the backside of all his teachers. Meanwhile, all this while his old man and mama never really knew. Like, his mom and dad didn't know their 11-year-old son was gangbanging, right? They didn't know they were raising a mini gangbanger under their roof until one fateful morning when they got a call from the school. Their son had gotten into some sort of trouble, and they had to see the principal.
But, we didn't give a fuck as young kids. You know what I'm talking about? We went anywhere we wanted to. You get what I'm saying? But that shit changed actually and shit. That changed a big step. My pops was hot when he found out. My pops found out when I was 12, though. He found out when I was going to school at Horseman. You know what I'm saying? The principal, I got called him in here. I had a squabble. And he called him off. She like, your son bang. He like, my son don't bang. He like, your son do bang. He like, my son don't bang. He like, he do. He like, man, look at the tattoo on his back. He grabbed me and put it on my back. My homie, I did the 4 on my back. My homie Papa 40, my big homie. And when he seen the 4 on my back, he went up. I broke out the school. See, that's when my pops found out and said, you know how that go.
Damn. So what happens when you get home that night?
Shit, I didn't even go home that night. Shit, I went to my homie house.
To their horror, when they got to the principal office, it turned out they had been raising a terrorist under their roof. Not the Osama bin Laden kind of terrorist, but the one that picks up on other kids and beats them to a pulp. The principal didn't hesitate with the sad news either. He told them point blank that their son was gangbanging and getting into all these fights. He was 11 at the time, but it was gangbanging or nothing. It was the hood or nothing. His mentality was he's gonna gangbang all his life and he ain't really care about school. His dad was let down because he wanted his son to take after him. But sadly, he had tasted the ways of the streets first and there was no going back from there. Rather than to go home to his parents, he made the streets his home. He went to crash with a friend for some time, and after that, he was fully committed to the streets. He had Rollin 40's blood running through his veins. As I said, 4 Extra embraced the way of the streets as early as when he was still pooping his diapers. His cousins probably taught him to throw some punches when he was still a little one lying in a crib. As a result, the dude was ferocious. Although he was quite skinny for an 11-year-old, he fought like he'd been running the streets way before he was born. One day, he was up against a bigger kid who was way older than him. He was just 11 years old, and he was fighting a 15-year-old dude. It was a good fight, and he got beat since he was the smaller one, but he didn't go down without a bang. He split open this dude's face with a punch. It was so hard that some of the older dudes there said he has something extra. And after that fight, the streets unanimously decided to call him Extra, and that was how he got the name 4 Extra. Now, when a dude joins the gang, no matter how young he is, he takes up 1, 2, or even all 3 things: drinking, smoking, and drugs. However, 4 Extra was a little different because this dude doesn't do any of the 3. Finally, one thing he listened to when it comes to his father, right? Right? Hey, you feel me? His dad ain't want him to gangbang, man, but his dad at least told him, bro, to stay off the drugs and the liquor. Right? But there's another possibility, which is that getting into fights gave him more than enough highs to desire a bottle, smoke, or drugs. This could be the reason, though, because 4 Extra couldn't just resist the urge to throw a punch. He went into beast mode at the drop of a hat. This propensity to roll his sleeves and get all beastie launched another level of his street career, the level of run-ins with law enforcement. This new level came quite early. After just 1 year on the streets when he was just 12, maybe nobody told 4 Extra that the consequences of doing certain things in the real world were beyond the principal's office and calling your parents in, because one day the dude picked on an opponent and the fight was so intense that it left the other dude hanging on to his life by a thread.
But, okay, well, how'd you catch a attempted murder at 12? What happened?
Oh, shit, it's gangbanging. Shit, it's part of gangbanging. You know how they go.
Uh-huh.
You know what I'm saying? It's a part of the life.
So what, you slid on somebody?
I don't know, man. I ain't gonna say all that shit on here.
But it's like a million years ago. You can't talk about 20 years ago?
No, I don't give a fuck if it was a billion years ago.
Okay.
I won't get on this motherfucker and talk about that motherfucker because at the end of the day, nobody should never get on here, talk about certain shit on here.
Police picked him up and charged him with attempted murder. The court found him guilty after the trial and he was sentenced to life. Imagine being 12 and beating up somebody so bad that you got sentenced to life. He became a myth, a legend, and a folklore in the Rollin 40s, bro. Like, the dude became a legend too early, being taken in for life at just 12. Now, since he was a 12-year-old kid, it really wasn't life. It was juvenile life, and he was to serve 6 years in juvie. Now, getting arrested for attempted murder at 12 showed his potential on the street and also laid the foundation for a long history with law enforcement, a history that would produce several incarcerations. Meanwhile, this dude was called 4 Extra for a reason, because he went on to prove himself in juvie. He maintained the gang lifestyle there and fought pretty much every rival kid. You have to understand that some of these fights were for survival, not really because the dude was a bull. Notwithstanding, after serving 3 years of the original 6 years, 4 Extra smelled the fresh air of freedom once again. He got into juvie as a skinny 12-year-old. By the time he left, he was a hardened 15-year-old determined to advance his street career. So when he got out of juvie, he hit the hood and lit things up literally. The 12-year-old who fought by just throwing punches moved things up a notch, and this time he got himself a gun. For 6 months, he was all over the place doing the only things he knew since he took his first breath, gangbanging. During this time, the law caught up with him again, and he was taken into the system for gun possession.
On a Sunday, they kicked us out. But I got back out when I got out at 16. I came right back, like shit, 8 months later for a bluer.
Okay. How much time did they give you that time?
They gave me 9 months. 9 months in camp for that shit. That shit wasn't nothing. I went up to camp. I only stayed in camp for like 60 days and got refouled on for getting cracking. I was at Camp Munns, and then I went to Resnick.
During all this, are you going to school at all?
Hell no. You know, we go to school up in the halls, but you know, as soon as you walk up in the school, you get cracking in that mother. As soon as you see your enemy, it's on sight. You get cracking, unless you want to go there and shit.
One of the most notable fights that 4 Extra had in prison with an enemy was with another notable gang member called Jap 5. Now, 4 Extra will get out and tell the story about how he did get the best of Jap 5 and how he beat up Jap 5. And that will be a really controversial clip from 4 Extra because Jap 5 is known for having one of the best squabbles the West Coast has ever seen.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, man.
He was.
Yeah, man. He talking about the young kid, man. You know,
I heard he got ham.
have it that day. Have it that day.
Yeah.
Shit. I knocked his board. That nigga flew over the table. You know, he came through. You know what I'm talking about? He came in the dorm, little kid.
Yeah.
You know, the little kid came up and called a little, you know what I'm talking about? Sliding through. He's, 4 Extras, I'm only 20. That got to do with me, nigga.
Right.
That got nothing to do with me.
Right. That
You know what I'm saying? He was a rapper. Nigga's a rapper now. God,
Yeah.
times changed. I've been gone.
Bro, you know him and Crip Mac fought about what, last year, I believe?
Oh,
in
you fought the
prison?
homie?
You didn't know that? Crip Mac and
I've been gone.
Oh,
They got me
okay. Yes.
Yeah, that was pretty quick, all right? Now, like, do Harley spend 1 year of his teens breathing free air? Because this time he will face 3 years in juvie, meaning that he will get out of this one when he was almost 19 years old. So 4 Extra's first strike with the law ended the period from when he was a gangster in diapers to a skinny 12-year-old fighter. After that, he leveled up his street rap to a 15-year-old gun carrier. Now, who knows what the second strike will produce when he leaves juvie as an adult.
Don't get on here speaking about shit that you don't supposed to say. That's why I said I don't give a fuck if it's 1 billion years ago. I'm not saying none of that. Point blank, I'm a gang member.
All right, now 4 Extra must be one very lucky dude because, like, the first time he didn't see out his full sentence, it was released after just 2 years when he was 17 years old. However, one thing about lucky dudes or lucky criminals, that after getting lucky, they just turn around and mess things up again without really thinking. In 4 Extra's case, the dude came out of juvie with no intentions to stay free. It's a trend here. Whenever 4 Extra got out of jail for one particular crime, he usually upped his ante, all right? So he got out of jail for just possession of a firearm. And then he moved things up to theft when he got out of jail. Barely 1 year after getting out of juvie, precisely a few days after his 18th birthday, 4 Extra was taken in by the police for burglary.
For a gun. And then I stayed in there to 17 and I got back out 17 going on 18. When I turned 18, I went to prison at 18 for burglary, for a fly.
It just seems like this one doesn't know how to stay on the streets because he keeps getting back to his comfort zone, behind bars. Well, he was sentenced to 9 years in jail, and since he was an adult, they sent him to county jail. He was no longer, like this skinny 12-year-old kid, who was surrounded by other kids. This was the real deal because he was housed on level 4 with other dudes with life sentences. The county jail was a different ballgame, but I would give it a 4 Extra because he lived up to his name. First off, as an 18-year-old new fish in a county jail with all the tough offenders, he survived 9 fades on the first day. 4 Extra for a reason, bro. Dude was a menace. If you know anything about how jail runs, you will know that these dudes continue as gangbangers even behind bars. It's called prison politics. So seeing at least one dude go down each day was a common occurrence. 4 Extra endured this horror as an 18-year-old, and at some point, he even got into the middle things and became a politician. While in prison, 4 Extra would stab up one of his homies on the yard because according to him, his homie went bad. Now, when gang members say go bad, it could mean various of things. One of the most common phrases for go bad means the person turned into a snitch.
Popping on one of my homies right there and shit. I got cracking on one of my homies. Then they sent me up to Pelican Bay. So I went up there to Pelican Bay to the shoe.
Is that when you get caught for that? I'm taking it?
Yeah, on the set. I got caught.
Okay.
Booked my homie on the yard, stabbed him up, cause it was no good. Popped him up and shit. So boom, they hit me for attempted murder and they sent me to Pelican Bay. I went to C7. I landed in C7 over there in the shoe in Pelican Bay. They gave me 24 months in the shoe.
Right now, dude became like a politician in jail. Right, again, this is one of the most unique things I've ever heard. Remember the lucky thing I said earlier about how lucky criminals, usually go on to messing up their life because they keep getting away with it, right? This dude just has a good way of messing his life up. So one day he decides to play tough and takes out another inmate, and he gets the hole for his action, right? He gets sent to solitary confinement. Trust me, you don't want to be in a hole as an inmate because that's one of the nasty parts of prison life. Some dudes never leave there the same because they lost their minds in the hole. Well, 4 Extra survived the hole and other horrors of prison life for 8 years and 6 months. And, like the lucky criminal he was, bruh, he got out again. But will he cling to the soothing taste of air outside the walls of incarceration? Or will he be the lucky criminal thing again and, start doing crime again? In his words, he got out of prison wiser and with some education, but as good as this wisdom and education were, it didn't keep 4 Extra off the streets. In fact, he immediately went back to gangbanging the minute he left the walls of the county jail. So what good was this great education he got in prison? I think that's left for him to answer. I don't know, especially because it was just good enough to keep him on the streets for just 2 years. After 2 years of enjoying freedom, he did what most lucky criminals do. He messed things up royally. Right? 4 Extra claims he was framed this time, but whatever the truth is, the dude was back in police custody, and this time he was going behind bars for life. I kind of find it interesting that every time 4 Extra went in for something new, it was always higher than the previous time. So this time, he was not just going in for life, he was going to spend his sentence in a facility higher than a county jail. 4 Extra booked a lifetime membership in one of the nastiest jails you could think of, Pelican Bay.
You get what I'm saying? So, shit, I know how it is. I was just inside that shoe. You get what I'm saying? I know how it is to be stuck between them walls.
Pelican Bay has a wild reputation.
I know it is. Yes, it do.
The worst or one of the worst prisons in California.
Yes, it is. It's the last stop.
What do you think is like the wildest thing that you've seen that you can talk about?
Shit. I don't want to talk about a lot of shit, but shit. I done got cracking on. I told that motherfucker up. You know what I'm talking about? You go check my resume. Any real niggas watching this, they know. You know what I'm saying? I done told that motherfucker up. Told both yours up. You know what I'm saying? I done got cracking up there. I done told some shit up there. You know what I'm talking about? And I had the keys to my homies up there, so you know how that shit go. On the set, but I done told that motherfucker up.
However, once again, man, Lady Luck smiled on 4 Extra, and he got out on parole. But this time, it seems he isn't doing the lucky criminal thing. Rather, he has changed for good. So what's the difference this time? After spending his teens and 20s in and out of jail, it seems that the jailbird just woke up to reality, man, that the gang life doesn't pay. I wish he believed this 100% though, because unlike some repentant gangbangers, this dude doesn't regret anything he has done in the past. How are you repentant and don't regret your past actions? Well, that's 4 Extra kind of repentance. But I will give it to him though. 4 Extra has made a solid 180, and it doesn't look like he's interested in doing things that will put him back into prison. 4 Extra has been feeding the homeless, has been doing community work.
You already know. It's the deal when the bounty hunters and the 40s come together to go feed the community.
Yeah, man, viral situation, man. We gotta start doing this a lot more often. At least once every month, off the strip.
Once a month. Alright. One time. Let's go pass these motherfuckers out to the community.
We out here.
On top of feeding the community, 4 Extra does has a promising media career because right now he's one of the most in-demand, personalities for your podcast. And he is charging a hefty fee to do these podcast appearances. So it does look like he's turning his life around, and he does have a legitimate career at this point that's going to keep him from off the street. And that's a good thing, right? Because, we all deserve redemption. We all deserve a second chance at life. And that's as long as you don't take a life. My philosophy is as long as you don't take a life, you deserve a second chance at life yourself, right? Now, so hopefully 4 Extra stays out of jail, man. And if you're still watching, click on the video somewhere on my screen to find out how Diddy used this tactic to blackmail the industry for 30 years. Click on this video here to find out what I'm talking about. Out of here, folks.